Hi everyone, and welcome to Total Education with Neil Haley. Always excited to do the TV show. I have a radio show host about 8 shows a week, so constantly busy doing radio, but finally to get to be with people next to me is nice. I'm lonely all the time, but you guys can go to my website at totaltutor.net and you can listen to all the radio shows, again, syndicated on over 90 plus stations. We're growing every day. Awesome people I interview, and it's great. You got to check it out. But Total Education, this TV show, we really try to go to some roundtable discussions. First month we went into parenting, then parent-teacher conferences. Now co-parenting, but I first want to welcome to the program my co-host, Dr. G. Dr. G, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much for having me, Nick.
Fantastic. And this is a subject that I want to learn about. When I heard the word co-parenting, I was kind of figuring out the definition of it. That's why I'm the questioner, especially being a former teacher. So I want to welcome to the program Disha Philia.
Yes.
Disha, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
It's fantastic. And the whole thing about co-parenting, the first question I'm going to ask is how we define it. Again,
Yes.
You are a author and also an expert in this. So tell us about that.
Co-parenting is often called shared parenting, and what it means is parents partnering together to parent across 2 households after a breakup. Sometimes that's a divorce, or if a couple was never married even, but they're parenting after their relationship has ended, and they're being equal partners in the raising of their children. And so that's the basic definition. And then it gets a little more complicated, because by equal partners, sometimes that means equal time. Sometimes it means that there's not equal time. There are lots of different configurations in terms of how co-parenting looks. But the basic premise is that parents are working together to raise their children. And it's a shift from what used to be the norm, which is when a couple was no longer together, the mother was the primary caretaker, and dad was either not there or a weekend father, and really marginalized. And so co-parenting represents what I believe is a positive shift in our culture to recognize that children need both parents, and they thrive when both parents are active and willing participants in raising them.
And I think that's so important, because we run into it a lot of times where one parent's absent when the relationship ends. Either you said if they're married or not, or they were dating and that relationship ends. They have to be involved, because you really run into a lot of situations. 2 parents is a very important thing in raising a child, regardless. And if you don't, a lot of problems, right? And it definitely can be a challenge, more and more of a challenge.
And this isn't something that is specific to parents who are parenting across 2 households, but that presents a unique situation that is so common now.
Right.
And one of the things that I have to imagine, if I were watching this program as a co-parent, is I would say, okay, I'd really have 2 questions. How can I do this better? And how can I motivate my ex-partner to do this better?
Okay. The first question, and I love when people ask that question of themselves, what can I do to be a better co-parent and to make this experience better for my children? Because often, whether it's in a co-parenting relationship or any relationship, we want to fix the other person. But when you start with yourself, I think the first thing that is crucial for parents is to move on from the old relationship. If there is a co-parenting situation where there was a marriage or a prior relationship, and really think of it as dead and buried in a way. We talk about the zombie old relationship that comes and kind of haunts the new co-parenting relationship, but to really see a separate, the co-parenting partnership is completely separate. The children's relationship with their parents are separate from the intimate relationship, and so there's a lot of healing that has to happen and moving on. Sometimes you can get closure, sometimes you can't, but our children are really counting on us to be the grown-ups and to be mature and to be able to process that breakup and to be fully present then to parent them and to parent cooperatively, and the key is the cooperation. So I think the one step in doing it better is saying, am I being as cooperative as I can be? Am I being as flexible as I can be? What are my motivations when it's time to create a schedule, or when it's time to sit down and figure out who's going to help the child with a school project? And a lot of times our human nature is, oh, this person hurt me, or I'm still, sort of licking my wounds from what happened, and it's hard to then refocus. But I think that's the core part of it, is to just be fully present and to move past that old relationship. And sometimes that means forgiveness, forgiving the other person, forgiving yourself for things that might have happened in the relationship, again, to just really free you up to focus on what your kids need, and that may require flexibility, communication. A lot of relationships end because communication is a problem, but then you have to communicate as co-parents.
Exactly.
So just, if you could do it well in your intimate relationship, you'd still be together. But I tell people, because I have a very congenial relationship with my ex-husband, the reason we can co-parent well is because we don't have to deal with the intimate stuff. We have no expectations of each other except as fellow parents. And so I think adjusting those expectations is another key for, this is how I can do better. And then even though all we can control is ourselves, there is a desire at times when the other parent really isn't pulling their weight maybe, or isn't willing to communicate. I'm from the South. We say you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So I think your approach, asking someone to talk with you about something, or phrase things like, I have a concern, or have you noticed, or what do you think about, as opposed to accusations. There's a big difference between, Johnny never does homework at your house and now he's failing, versus, oh my goodness, did you see Johnny's report card? Can we set up a time to talk about how we can help him? There's slight differences. You're getting at the same issue, but just coming at it in a way that's more congenial. And you set the tone.
When I'm thinking of this in the relationship situation, how long is this healing process to finally kind of mend everything? Because a lot of times there's that adversity going on, a lot of friction. How much time do you think it takes a lot of times so that we can finally kind of get things healed and look at the most important thing, which is the child?
It can take years, and it doesn't happen where you heal and then you can start co-parenting. I mean, our kids, you don't get to press pause. For my ex-husband and for me, that was the one thing we could agree on. And we couldn't agree on anything else, but we wanted our kids to be as okay as they could be given the circumstances. And so we had to put on that. I mean, some people say fake it till you make it, and I think that's perfectly fine. We, in front of our kids, and whenever they were at their events or we had to do school projects or whatever, we put on a good face for them. And there would be times, especially during the legal portion of our divorce, where there would be these angry emails and voicemails and F-bombs and all of that. But our kids were never exposed to any of that. And so the healing process for us took years, but at the same time that we were able to be mature enough in their presence, and to work in the meantime, sort of concurrently work on our own personal healing. And for people that can involve, sometimes it is just time, sometimes professional help, a divorce support group, finding people who also want to heal and want to have a positive approach. You can always find, let me think of a TV-friendly term for it, sort of the negative, people who can sort of stay mired in the negativity, but really being selective about who you seek counsel from, friends and family. I tell people, the way to find a good person to be sort of your partner in this is someone who's not there to take your side in the divorce or breakup, but to take your child's side. Because then that person isn't there to help you sort of pile on your ex and bash your ex. They're helping you stay focused on, well, what does your kid need from you right now?
So you're suggesting to find someone in your life that you can count on, who really loves your child or your children,
absolutely,
and knows you well enough to stand up and take their part against you a little bit and hold you accountable.
Exactly, and to let you know, to love you with the truth. That's what I say. To say to someone, gosh, you just had this whole conversation with me about what your ex did, and your kid was sitting right there. I really would appreciate that if, when we have these conversations, because I know you need to vent, let's do it when your child's not there. When you're sure they're not in earshot, because kids hear everything.
They hear everything.
They hear everything. And when kids hear negative things about another parent, it's so confusing and it's so hurtful, because that's half of who they are. And they don't know, well, if I love this person and mom and dad is saying this other person's a jerk, what am I supposed to do? And it just complicates and compounds the hurt that already comes with the trauma of the breakup.
So thinking about definition, I think also it's the outside, what other people see. Like, let's say you're with your ex and you're out in the community.
Yes.
And sometimes that can be challenging at first, because they would say, oh, is that your husband? Or is that your wife? See, that's where I'm looking at the whole definition thing, because that kind of gets really confusing, especially out in the community where they might not know.
Right. And at our children's school, we've been at the same school for 9 years, and there was a family that had been divorced as long as we had been divorced, and I didn't know it, because I would see the mom and the dad at school functions, and they were still functioning as a team. They just didn't have an intimate relationship anymore. And unfortunately, in our culture, that seems weird. It shouldn't, being cooperative shouldn't seem weird. But that's part of the work that we started with our website, coparenting101.org, was to challenge that notion that congeniality and even friendliness, you don't have to be friends with your ex, but just civility with your ex. It's not weird.
Yes.
It's not suspect. It doesn't mean you're still carrying a torch. It just means that you love your kids more than you hate or have issues with their other parent. So yeah, we would get comments from people, either positive or negative. Some people thought it was weird. Other people thought, how great is that? And one of the most telling comments we get is from adults whose parents broke up, who said, "Gosh, I wish my parents would act like that, would have acted like that," or "I wish my parents had a website to go to help them, because they did the best that they could, but they just couldn't stop fighting, and they just didn't know." And I think most parents mean well. They don't always know what their grown-up stuff is doing to their kids. They're so caught up. I mean, think about it, especially in divorce. You're worried about money, where you're going to live. Your whole life is changing. Your emotional resources are at their absolute lowest. This is the absolute worst time, to have this huge parenting challenge, but it's still there. And so for a lot of kids, they don't have the language to tell their parents, "I'm hurting." Or they feel like they have to take care of the parent because they can see that the parent is hurting too. And so a really important message is to tell your child, you know what, my job is to take care of you. It's not the other way around. And reassure them, this is tough, this is hard, maybe the hardest thing we've ever had to face, but we can get through it. And it's like when you drop your kids off at daycare or preschool for the first time and they're just beside themselves. But if you present, as if everything is fine. Right. You get in the car and fall apart. You can lose it then. It's the same thing. It's really, so many of the dynamics are the same.
Tisha, I have a question. You mentioned, rightly so, that kids aren't just going through this with blinders on. They notice their parents' experience in so many ways. So developmentally, especially for kids in the 5 to 10-year-old range, they really have this black and white reasoning, right? That there are just there are yes and no answers. They think very binary. So, and our culture is one of taking sides.
Yes.
Right now with the elections, with sporting events, we are of taking sides. What can parents say in this open communication? This is a hard time, but it's my job to take care of you, not the reverse. What can parents say to their children that says to them, not only is it okay not to take sides, it would be better for me and for you if you didn't.
Right. I think it's giving them explicit permission to continue to love and have a close relationship with the other parent. And just say, I miss you when you're at your mom's house, but I'm so glad that you get to spend time with her. Even if you don't really believe that, that's fake it till you make it. Because sometimes people are really still very angry, and we decide if somebody's not a good partner, they can't be a good parent, and that's a really big mistake because those are two different roles. But really giving your child explicit permission to love the other person and not feel like there's a problem when they go and spend time with the other parent. When they come back, hey, what'd you do, with your mom? What'd you do with your dad? Wanting to hear about it, because kids really quickly pick up on if they start talking about the fun time they had, and even our faces can betray us. So just being very explicit about what we're doing here is fine. You having a happy time in the midst of what can be a really dark time is a good thing. We want those happy moments. And I think the other part of in terms of your question about helping them to know that they don't that they absolutely should feel like, how did you say, don't take sides, is that you're letting them know that they're still part of a loving family. And really looking at the definition of family, because they're still part of a family. Their family is just living in two different places. And I think starting with that premise, you're still part of a family. Your family is across two households. And divorce changes so much, but here's something that's not going to change. Our love for you is never going to change.
Because the stereotype of divorce is that parents say that to kids, but kids don't feel it.
Right. They don't feel it because then the parents don't act it out. So if you tell your child you're still part of a loving family, then that's another lens through which to, look at your behavior. Would somebody, in your child's loving family, would you bash another relative?
So,
out loud, exactly, to the child or in their earshot.
Absolutely. So when we get back, we're going to kind of look at the challenges.
Okay.
We've defined it, some of the things to kind of, so everyone in the audience understands, our viewers, what co-parenting is. Now we have to look at the challenges. When we get back, we're going to learn more about the challenges. You're listening to Education Show. We'll be back in just a moment.
They call them the golden years, and for many seniors, they are. But for too many others, retirement is like a prison.
Do you have any jacks?
The difference? This couple saved for their retirement, and this couple didn't. It's your choice. Choose to save. To learn how to get started, get your free Power to Choose brochure, because your retirement can truly be your golden years.
We're back to Total Education with Neil Haley, and I'm with Dr. G and Disha, and we're talking about co-parenting. And I have learned the definition of it now. Now I know all parenting is challenging. But now I've defined some of the challenges, because I think that Dr. G would like to know, and ourselves, we kind of think about this, but we really need to know this because we have no idea, as you said before, about when we see a couple out that it could be a co-parenting situation right now. Yeah.
I think one of the challenges is for children, the fact that they're transitioning between houses. They don't have one place that they call home. And actually some parents do something really interesting called nesting, which is the parents rotate in and out of the house and the kids stay. So that's a whole other conversation, and that's not for the faint of heart. There has to be a lot of communication there. But most families where there is co-parenting, children have two homes. And I think one of the key challenges is letting kids know that both homes are their home. That, you know, your children don't visit. That's a word that is less and less being used in legal jargon. Courts are recognizing, there's custody and visitation. Courts are moving away from that now. And so now there's the phrase parenting time. So even if you only have 30% parenting time, it's still parenting time. It's not visitation. So children feel like both of these are my homes. And so to the extent possible, it's great if kids can have everything or most everything they need at both houses. And so the idea of, schlepping the suitcase back and forth is something parents might want to consider. Is that really helping my kid feel like these are two homes that are equal in terms of you can be comfortable in both places, your needs can be met in both places, and that one parent is not the primary parent, because that really kind of undermines the other parent's authority. It can undermine the relationship that the child has with the other parent.
That can happen all in one house.
Yes, and so a lot of the same dynamics, and also the same when you're in the same house is division of labor and the workload. Often in intact families, one parent gets all the burden of all the schoolwork. Yes. And when there's a breakup, that dynamic can continue, but then it becomes a little more obvious, and it can be a little less practical, because now the child may only be with that parent half the time. So how do you get all the homework done if the child is there only half the time? The good news about that is that a lot of parents will rise to the occasion after a breakup when they're co-parenting, and suddenly the things that they never had to do or they never chose to do in the context of their relationship and in that singular household, they can rise to the occasion. So the challenge comes either when they don't or when the other parent doesn't allow them to. I've always been in charge of the projects. Well, it's a new day. Lots of things are changing. And we've asked our kids to roll with these changes, and let's model that for them. Let's model getting out of our comfort zone a little bit and trusting another parent. But then the other parent also has to be trustworthy and has to be, responsible.
I have one question. It makes complete sense to me that you wouldn't want your child packing clothes and favorite stuffed animals and dragging back and forth. But if there is, for a younger child, one lovey.
Yes,
or
absolutely.
If, for a school-age child, my kids, they have both parents in one house and they're still dragging their backpacks all over hither and yon, right? So schoolwork, you're not going to double. So bringing a backpack back and forth is probably not so damaging?
Not at all. It's when you have nothing and again, I'll stick with the traditional gender, roles, where at dad's house, there's nothing there. So I have to bring my suitcase. Yeah. But how great is it to just grab your backpack, grab your lovey, and you go to dad's house and all your clothes are already there. All your toiletries are already there. And,
your room looks like you left
it. And you have your room, exactly. And there's a space that's dedicated and it's just for you. So that is the difference. That there are things that kids want to take back and forth. Or, my daughter's case, she has, my older daughter, she's 13 now. Of course she has clothes at her dad's house, but there's a special thing that she knows she wants to wear on Friday, and she knows she's going to be at her dad's Friday morning. So when she leaves my house, she's like, I want to make sure I have this. So that's the flexibility of it. We get into trouble when parents start trying to figure out, well, I bought this, so it can't leave my house, or if you take it, you have to bring it back. And it just, again, that's when you stop and think, is this what it means to be in a loving family? Am I making this easier for my child, or am I making it harder?
And what about going back and forth, right? This is your parenting time, but I want to stop into mom's house and pick up this thing because I needed it, or, I really want 15 minutes with my dog that lives at my mom's house, or something like that.
It depends on the circumstances, because if it's practical to do, you can do, but you also want to help kids sort of move along and know, what, on Tuesdays you're not going to see Sparky. But you get to see Sparky Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, And so it's not always saying no, it's not always saying yes. It's really, getting behind your child's eyes and saying, is this really about Sparky? Because maybe it's not. Maybe it's not just about Sparky. Or you can take a picture of Sparky and I'll, send it to your phone, or, things like that.
If your dad's really a good guy, you could take Sparky.
Yeah, you can, you can co-parent the dog. Co-parenting the pets. And so I think that's a big part of it, is that often there are no hard and fast answers. I know in our family, our parenting time schedule has changed over the years. Our kids do something for a couple of weeks and then they're like, oh, okay, we don't want to do that again, in terms of, one child might want to really be with one parent because something's going on. When my ex-husband got remarried, the girls wanted a lot more time with him. And so we, facilitated that. So I think it's going with what your child needs and being as flexible as you can. The same with the schoolwork. The kids are with me every day after school. It's great if they can get their homework done, before they go to their dad's, because that gives them more time with him. But my older daughter prefers to do social studies with her dad. And I could say, well, I'm, just as good as he is. But again, you pick your battles. And I'm a writer, and so the girls always want to do writing related things with me. So it can balance out, and just accepting that kids love us and love different things about us, and that's okay, and that we're not in competition with each other.
And gender roles of the parents. Now that's a challenge. Because let me give you an example. Especially a fathering role. My wife and I, you're doing that. You can do this. So let's just say dad's bachelor now. Doesn't have any help at all. Just like you don't have any help at all. But basically has never done anything before. That's got to be a tremendous challenge, because not understanding the whole role of taking on not just the fatherly role, but the motherly role as well. How do you kind of, that's got to be a challenging thing as well, because now they have to do a lot of things that maybe they weren't given baths. Maybe they weren't doing, because everyone defines the roles as a couple. Sure. Now they're taking on both roles. That's really challenging.
It's being resourceful, just like that dad had to get on the internet and find out what kind of divorce attorney do I need, what kind, I had to find a place to live and all of that. If what you need are parenting resources, look for those. And I'll give a little plug. There's singledad.com. RJ Jaramillo does a great site, and it's every aspect of parenting. It's not just fathering. And so you've got videos of RJ saying, here's a meal you can throw together in 15 minutes.
Exactly.
In this age,
kids have to eat every day.
In this day and age, anything you need, you can find. You can find the resources. Divorce support group, and finding other dads who have walked this path and who have said, I didn't know how to do this. but now I do. Our kids are great motivators. When they were born, we didn't know how to do any of that
Exactly.
stuff. And so we figured it out. And it's okay to make some mistakes and let our kids, and the kids we're modeling things for them. We're modeling resourcefulness. We're modeling that it's okay to make mistakes and laugh at ourselves and trial and error. And I think that it's good for kids to see, and often it is dad, that dad's going to do things differently than mom did, and that's okay. And I want to say to moms, let them do things differently. And I thank my ex, because I can't tell you how many times he has had to hear, but mommy does it this way. And he could have really, made it like this.
Exactly.
But he was good about saying, but you know what, that's great, but daddy's going to do it like this, and being confident. So I think dads have to get that confidence. Again, fake it till you make it. Or it could be moms. We can't always assume that, moms are always the most, maternal or that they handle the parenting.
Roles.
There's different roles, but whoever needs to kind of bone up on those parenting skills, they'll do it. Our kids are great motivators, because once you send your kid to school in a midriff top in the middle of winter, you'll get the idea. You got to take those clothes out of the drawer that no longer fit, and that's okay, and that's perfectly okay, because we're human, and that's how we should learn. But also, our kids are watching, and how great is it for a kid to see their dad or their mom sort of building this skill set, instead of thinking, well, I've always got to go to this other parent to get what I need, and come to the understanding, it's going to be different, but I can get what I need from both my parents.
They're really going to learn resilience.
Yes.
If they have the opportunity to watch us make mistakes, learn from them, and maybe even laugh at ourselves a little bit, and be like, hey, not making the midriff top mistake again. Those clothes are going elsewhere.
Right, and being adaptable, because it's good for kids to have consistency as much as you can, so it's not so jarring going from one house to the other. But it's important for them to adapt, because they're going to have a teacher one year who's really nurturing at school, and then another teacher who's, that Miss Nelson is missing, the evil witch teacher that comes. And so they have to learn how to adapt to different people and different styles and different environments.
So let me ask you about a challenge that some of our viewers might be thinking, well, this sounds great if your co-parent is awesome parenting. What about the parent who sends their child for the parenting time at the other parent's home, and they're scared about what's going on there?
Everybody has to decide what that line is between, I don't like what's going on, and it's not what I would do, and there's a real concern, and I'm concerned about my child's welfare. And over time, I think people draw that line differently, especially in the beginning. If you're used to having your children with you all the time, you imagine all kinds of horrible things are happening at the other house, or maybe they're not getting a bath as often. If you can communicate with your ex and talk about concerns and try and get them on board, that's great. That's absolutely great. And a lot of people can do that, and it's just a conversation or a few conversations. But when someone has drawn the line in the sand and it becomes, you're not going to tell me what to do in my house, you have a couple of choices. Some people will try and go to court. The courts don't like to have to manage our families, and honestly, they're not always very good at it. And so to the extent that we can work things out ourselves, we can come up with solutions that we can live with, as opposed to having a judge who doesn't know our family, doesn't know our kids, making these decisions for us, and then nobody's happy. But there are times when, if your child really is in danger, you really do need to use the legal resources that are available to you. And then sometimes even when that fails, when all else fails, I've learned from some other parents that you take the approach of, if my neighbor next door was doing this with their child, would I call the authorities? If you wouldn't call the authorities on your neighbor, say a prayer and let your kids go and wish for the best.
All right, well, when we get back, I still think we have to tackle some more challenges before we get to our recommendations. Great knowledge, really explaining things, defining things, and understanding. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but as Dr. G and I know, regular parenting is not the easiest, but now throw a couple other things into the mix, and it's interesting. And I think that also traditional parents are learning from this as well, because there's some great recommendations so far you've been able to give us. So when we get back, more with Total Education with Neil, we'll be back in just a minute.
Diversification. It's a pretty big word, especially when it comes to structuring your investment portfolio. Simply put, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Learn more about the importance of diversifying your portfolio and choose to save.
When I was younger, I didn't want to admit I had a serious disease. Because of my diabetes, I lost the sight in my left eye. Misconceptions continue to surround this monster public health issue. But the simple truth is, diabetes can often be prevented and complications avoided. You're not alone. Understand the realities of diabetes and know that you can manage it and lead a full, active life.
Back with Total Education with Neil. Co-parenting is our topic. I love roundtable discussions because we're able to really get different sides of the story. And with Dr. G and I asking these questions, we ask questions differently, which makes it such a great show. And we have different ways of ideas of parenting, and it's fantastic in that way. And that's so great that you're always able to join us. But we've been talking to Disha, and we're kind of learning the whole process of co-parenting. But I thought, we can define challenges in one segment. That's not the case at all. More. So let's define another one of the challenges.
Okay. Another challenge is, and we talked about this a little bit, when people can't move on. Right. But more specifically, when one parent is just committed to punishing the other parent, and that just interferes. And so I encourage people to sort of think of their ex as wearing their child like a human shield. So anything that you're going to try and do to hurt that other parent, and we want to hurt people. Right.
It's going to go through the child.
It's going to go through the child, and they're going to bear the brunt of that. And so that's a part of it. When people will say, I'm trying to talk to my ex about, my child is wearing the midriff top, and they're not doing their homework, and they're not, using good hygiene.
They're watching inappropriate TV, or they're
sometimes
not getting enough sleep.
The sleep. What should the bedtime be? If they're different bedtimes in different families or different households. And that's a tough one, because then you have someone, it's not about whether or not they have the parenting skills. They have to have the willingness to allow this person to partner with them and understand, you're still a parent 24/7. You're both concerned about the same person. Let's not make this a battleground. The child becomes the new battleground, because there's no other battleground when there's no other relationship.
Well, Disha, does it come back up again, even if you're starting to heal? Does it come back up again when your ex-partner starts to bring another person into that child's life?
That was the next challenge that I was going to mention.
Probably bubbles all back up, and then you're saying, well, now that's in my baby's life, so I got something to say about that.
Exactly.
Right?
It can happen even at the beginning, or it can happen, especially when there's been infidelity. We hear a lot from parents where the person's parting words as the other parent was leaving the family home was, I will never allow you to bring that so-and-so near my my child. Suddenly, because my child is no longer our child. Right. So there's that. And then then we also hear from people who, they had this just blissful co-parenting relationship, and everyone was friends and everything was great. And then somebody started dating, and somebody started dating seriously, or someone got engaged, or someone got married. And it happens on two sides. So the person who let's say dad has a new partner. Suddenly, all of a sudden, great, congratulations, you're getting married. I'm going to go file for some more child support. That has happened more than once. Or all of a sudden the dynamic changes, and then that's because mom is now having to work through that transition of, now dad has a new partner, here's this new person in my children's life.
And that maternal person
you feel threatened about. And so, maybe it was great when she was just a girlfriend, because maybe she could just go away, or we don't know, but now this is very permanent. And so then mom, instead of making it about the new stepmom, it's important then for mom to kind of do that work and realize, what is this about? Am I feeling threatened about being replaced? And then there's a role for dad. Maybe, speak to that with mom. No one could ever replace you as our children's mother. You're a great mom. And so there are things that if the couple
fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
If you're not believing it.
Exactly. Right? Just try to offer those assurances that no one is trying to, replace her, or just speak to whatever the concerns are, and take it from a problem-solving
Yes.
approach. You're not the problem, Dad, Mom.
Exactly.
This is the situation. I'm asking, it seems like the kids are never ready now when I come to pick up, and approaching it that way. Like, how can we make sure that they are ready and that you're not scheduling things during my time? The little subtle things that people can do, and it's really, in response to there being another person. The other side of it is now there's this new couple, and then sometimes people have something to prove. I need you to know that I am now the new person. And so, you can no longer communicate with your ex. You have to bring it through me. And believe it or not, that happens fairly commonly. And it's not at all
women
appropriate.
Can be really nasty to women.
And again, it's more gendered this time.
More women.
And so, there are even in parenting agreements that are through the court that said the parenting communication will be between the mother and the father and not a third party, just to kind of prevent that. But that person could be feeling some insecurity. And sadly, the more congenial the co-parenting is, the more of a threat it can be. And that happened with my ex and I when we were both still single and dating other people. Not every guy I dated thought it was great that I was good friends with my ex, and that he at the time lived right around the corner. And they just thought, oh, that can't possibly be okay. He must have something for you. And it's like, no, you can't imagine that a dad would just want to be that close to his kids. So there can be some insecurity on the part of the new partner. And I always say it takes a special person to date and remarry with a co-parent, because they are actually marrying this, some people call it the ex-in-law. I'm my ex-husband's ex-in-law, because I'm part of the package. We have really good boundaries, but the reality is I am still a part of his life in that I'm the mother of his kids. And so it takes grown-ups, and not everybody is mature enough to really handle those kind of feelings of, it's a little uncomfortable at times. And sometimes when some things are uncomfortable, we lash out or we get really passive aggressive instead of, let me own this, let me work through it. And so with those new partners, you're asking a third person to be a grown-up in the midst of all of these, shifting dynamics. And then the dad, often in the case, sometimes just throws his hands up because he can't make either of these people happy.
Right. Oh, please, what did I do?
Exactly.
So one of the challenges I would see, now we're talking about school. I believe school can become a very big hassle regardless if the parents are together or separated. Yeah. Now, I think that everyone watching this is saying, oh no. Because this can cause so much conflict. The amount of homework that can be involved. There are many different areas. First of all, who is going to be really responsible? It has to be shared. And that means the parent-teacher conference. That means the studying. If projects are going to be completed, there's a lot of delegation. That could be really challenging.
And I think the school is an example of a dynamic in co-parenting I think is important across lots of topics, which is what is going to be most beneficial and least stressful for children. So we talk a lot about doing things together, both parents being involved, but there's some people who are so mired in conflict that for them to be at the same place at the same time is not in anybody's best interest. I mean, and that's unfortunate. Well, that's the outliers.
But I would like to say that I see in my office often kids with stomach ache, head pain. I've seen kids and I've seen the hives, right? See people say, oh, the kid says they have a stomach ache because they're upset. But really, you can get really physical manifestations of this kind of stress. I had a girl who, she'd break out in hives every time both her parents were in the same place.
So ultimately, you want those parents to manage that and take that stress and take that burden from her, because they're asking her to shoulder the emotional burden of stuff they haven't resolved. And that's not fair, to ask. But to the extent that they're not willing to do that, if there's a teacher conference in that situation, it may be best, for the teacher to be able to do her job, that they have separate conferences. There are things that, ideals, I think. The ideal is parents being able to do things together and things being consistent across households. But whatever you can do to minimize the conflict, for your children. And so if you and your ex just cannot communicate about homework, then your kid, depending on his or her age, may have to take a lot more responsibility on than you would have otherwise, because now they've got to be responsible for making sure they have what they need and that they communicate with the parent that they're with. But the more parents communicate, the more we lift that burden off of our children. Every time we refuse to communicate and to cooperate, that's more work for our kids. And they're already trying to work hard and do their schoolwork. They shouldn't have to, in the third grade, worry so much about deadlines. Like, we help them so that by by the time they're in the 8th grade, they can handle, managing their own deadlines. But a 3rd grader, and I say that because I have a 3rd grader, they need the reminders. They need the parent looking ahead to saying, okay, whose weekends are these and how are we going to divide up the work? And so if you can have those conversations, and I know when our kids were younger, we met once a month and we just looked at the calendar and figured out everything that we needed to do, for that month. And then as the kids got older and as we got a little more comfortable with each other, it's more informal now. But, so parents can be really formal about it and sit down and say, here's the workload and here's how we're going to divide it up. But ultimately do whatever is going to take the stress off their kids, as much as they can.
One more challenge I wanted to ask about. Oh, no, actually two. So one is, if we're working really hard to have a civil, maybe even friendly, kind of warm relationship with our ex, and yet we get all these messages from the culture that must mean somebody's carrying a torch or something. How do we frame it for our children who are still hoping that we'll get back together?
Yes, and that happens. I know that we heard from this one woman who was dating a co-parent, and her boyfriend and his ex didn't want their 5-year-old to know that they didn't live together anymore, that they weren't together anymore. It was like, Daddy, he has another house, but they just didn't want to tell her. And so when he would come to pick her up, Mom and Dad would hug and kiss. And so the new girlfriend was like, I don't think I'm comfortable with that.
Boundaries.
So, so I think that it's important to have our kids understand that the breakup is permanent. But again, that's something that is not going to change. But here are the things that we're going to do because you are still part of a loving family. And every kid is different, and they've, and I guess you can broach the conversation, but often they'll ask, one of our daughters said, do you still love Daddy? That was, the question. And I said, like a brother. That was the example I gave her so she could understand. Yeah. And then one time she wanted us to hug, and I said, okay. So we hugged, and she said, will you kiss? And we said, no, that we don't have the kind of relationship where we kiss anymore. So I think
but
kids,
you give clear but positive answers.
Yes. And so, I think kids are figuring that dynamic out, and we hear that a lot because every year since we've been separated, we vacationed with our kids, and people go, oh my gosh, you vacation together. And people say, oh, I could never do that. My kids would be so confused. And I said, well, they would maybe if you never talked to them.
Right, if you didn't answer their questions.
Ask questions about it. And so if you're having the conversation where you're saying that, divorce or the breakup is permanent, there's not going to be a reconciliation. But this is something we do as a family. We don't, Dad and I have a relationship that's about we're a team to parent you, but that's it. And it's never going to be anything more than that. Our kids totally got that. And then we checked in with them a few years ago and said, we've been vacationing like this to help you understand that you still have you're part of a loving family. Is it something you still want to do? And they looked at us like we had 3 heads. Like, why wouldn't we keep,
Great. Yes.
And so they didn't have any delusions that we were going to get back together, but they still enjoyed the fact that we did things together as, a whole family from time to time. And he's remarried, I'm remarried, so I think they're kind of getting the idea that we're not going to get back together.
All cues point to that.
Yeah. Right, but, even when we weren't repartnered, our kids understood that we weren't going to get back together, that our friendliness was about them, but also because, we do like each other as people. We don't hate each other. So.
Okay. We ready to continue this, but now I think we've hit the challenges. Let's get some recommendations, some solid recommendations in the last segment of the show to kind of really, for parents to get a pen and paper out, start jotting things down, information, and then about where they can find even more information.
Okay.
You're listening to Total Education. You're watching Total Education with Neil Haley. We'll be back in just a minute. back, and I am learning so much from Disha today, and also Dr. G, because you guys are the parenting experts. I'm just here to be the journalist in a lot of ways, but put my 2 cents in certain ways. But now, after hearing this amount of information, an amount of challenges, I know, because I work with many families that are separated, and a lot of times we see the situation where there's a lot of conflict, a lot of challenges, and it really hurts their academics, their social life, a lot of different things. So if you can provide some great recommendations, what would be the first you would say to try to make sure that co-parenting is successful?
I would say for the parent to be the bigger person, be willing to be the bigger person, because often it's the co-parent is doing the best they can, but they're dealing with someone who is just, antagonistic or just inflexible. No one has ever contacted our website and said, I'm the parent who never wants to get along with anyone. So it's, it's usually, the parent who's trying, they perceive themselves as really trying, and they're just sort of beating their heads against the wall. And, I wish I had better answer, but sometimes you do have to be the bigger parent. You're not giving your ex a pass. You're not letting them off the hook. You're doing it for your child. It's a sacrifice. We started sacrificing before these little people were even born, in terms of the care that we did, even when they were still in utero. And it continues. And it's just a different way that we have to sacrifice. Sometimes it's not being, we're not going to have the last word. We're not going to be able to, fight fire with fire, because it's just not in our kids' best interest. So being the bigger person, and I learned this from one co-parent, standing down. We're always saying, stand up for yourself, stand up and go to court and get all your parental rights. And there's a time and a place where you may have to do that. But when you can, and sometimes it's in your kid's best interest to actually stand down, be the bigger person, choose your battles, all the cliches. And one of the great ways I've heard it phrased, and we have a Facebook group. It's on Facebook, coparenting101.org is the name of the group. And one of the members in the group, and they're all co-parents, so we're all learning from each other. And he posted something that said, you don't have to attend every battle that your ex invites you to. Yes. And we said, yes, let's RSVP our regrets to those battles. And I think if we think of it that way, it's, it takes 2 to fight. So, when you can, just stand down from the battle.
It sounds, Disha, like so much what you've been telling us today is we teach our kids to prioritize, and you're saying prioritize. Prioritize your child over your own genuine pain or agenda. Things like that, and put your kids at the top of the agenda. I wondered what you would suggest, and it was that last challenge that I didn't get to ask you about last hour. What would your recommendation be when you can't get your family to sign on to your child as your first priority? When your parent, as your parent, for example, really takes your side and just has nothing good to say about your ex?
2 parts to that, because one of the things you were saying is about being civil and all of that. I want to make sure no one thinks that means being a doormat, because we don't want our and we have to figure out where that line is, and we teach our children the difference between being civil and choosing our battles and letting someone just run all over us. And there's no easy answer. So I think parents, we have to take care of ourselves. Too. So while we want to make sure our children are our priorities, it's the whole airplane on the, with the oxygen mask. You've got to take care of yourself, and then you can, you're in a better position to make your child a priority. When family members or even, close friends are not on board with, being congenial, well, I can't believe you would ever forgive her for that or whatever. I think that's when we can have some hard conversations and really have to go into mama bear or papa bear mode, which is, you're entitled to your opinion of my ex, but I'm not going to allow you to say these things in front of my child. That's their dad, that's their mom, and we're not going to talk that way about him or about her in front of our children. And we can absolutely insist that the people in our lives respect that. We're not telling them how to feel. And you also know that, if I'm already kind of angry with my ex, I'm not going to call my mom right now, because she's just going to, take it in deeper. Let me go and call my friend who's also divorced, who's been out and who's been doing this for about 5 years now, and who's, kind of got a Zen thing going. That's who I want to be with right now. It's like a sponsor. It really is. Because the people that we surround ourselves with, if you're not going to influence them for the better, they're going to influence you for the worse. And so maybe in the beginning, it may some of the toxic stuff. You have to, until you can build up a little immunity to it, you have to draw some boundaries. And there's a lot of change, especially with divorce. Friendships and relationships do reconfigure, and that's okay. And understanding that we're not going to sacrifice our kids to make grown-ups happy. That that's really important. So as much as we love Mom and Dad and Aunt Judy, they've got to get over it themselves, but not at our kids' expense. So.
Some more recommendations?
Yes. People say, well, yeah, this sounds great, but it's so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. Well, again, we tell our kids all the time. They tell us it's hard to clean their room. Well, you still got to do it.
Try.
Do your best.
Yeah.
Do your best. Work hard at it. There's something to be said for working hard, especially, again, in our culture. We think we should never be uncomfortable, or nothing should ever, you shouldn't have to work at anything. And this is absolutely, hard work, but it's for a really good reason. It's for our kids. They're worth our best efforts. Even if it doesn't work out because the other person doesn't cooperate, you've given your best effort to your child. And so it's owning our own stuff. I think that, knowing that it's easy to say it's so hard, it's so much easier just to fight. It's so much easier just to blame him as opposed to, maybe I need to go and get some counseling because I can't get past this anger. Well, get somebody to help you get past the anger as opposed to saying, well, I'm just going to stay here because I don't know how to get past it. Get help in getting past it. Want to get past it and know that it's for your kids. Another way to help when people just have a block. I know it's the right thing to do. I know I want to be the bigger person. I just can't. Try to see the other parent through your child's eyes. You see, gosh, I can't say any of these words on TV. You see this person is very negative, but when you see him through your child's eyes, it's not that jerk. It's that jerk that's my dad. That jerk that's my mom. Then that's what your child sees. And so it does a kind of softening, or hopefully it does a bit of a softening, because somebody can be an absolute terrible partner, terrible husband, terrible wife, and a great mom and a great dad. Two separate relationships. So to try and see them primarily through that lens, and know that Mother's Day comes around, Father's Day comes around, and those are occasions where children want to celebrate that other parent. And just think about it. In that moment, you're only thinking about them as a mother, as a father, not about what happened in divorce court, not what happened back when you were together. And so it's almost like Mother's Day, Father's Day, every day. You have to take that moment and realize you have to honor that relationship. Because it's none of your business in a way, and that it's you're not responsible for that relationship, but it helps your child if you respect that relationship. And it's easier when the other person does that for you too. But
I think it's such an excellent point you made, to think that every time you take the opportunity to hurt your ex, you're hurting your child.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And just to know that, again, no one's saying be a doormat, no one's saying to gloss over real issues, but a lot of times, we turn everything into a major issue, but really just, choosing your battles, deciding what's most important and what's important to your kids.
Yeah.
It'd be great for your kids to get a bath every single day, for example.
Actually, I'll tell you as a doctor, that's not so important.
Okay, see?
It's really
and
not.
you'd be surprised how many families will fight over things like that. And then you realize there's more to it. There's this struggle over just the willingness to understand that there are two parents here. They both deserve time. Because sometimes we think if you hurt me, you don't deserve to be a parent, and that kind of thinking is really antithetical to co-parenting.
And we're talking about the recommendations. One thing I'm thinking about is how important is the collaboration between the couple.
Yes.
The ex. The get together, to sit down and talk and have many meetings.
Yes.
Either on the phone, and make sure that I guess that would be the communication has to be positive.
Right.
In a way, looking at the child first. And so what would you continue to say in that process of the meeting?
Sure. And sometimes phone or face-to-face doesn't work because people are combative, but email can work for some people because you can be very calm in an email. You can get an email and then take a day before you respond, as opposed to phone, which is, or right face-to-face, we say whatever comes to mind. And it gives you a chance to process. So some people use email exclusively, or they use a combination of email to sort of set the stage, and then they can meet. But I think if you, again, take it back to your child and say, as much as I don't want to sit down with this person, the message it sends to my child, you're so important and you're so loved. Even though we have these differences between us, it's so important that you are okay, that we're going to partner to make sure that you get what you need at school, that you have good health, that you get to your soccer games. We're going to be we're going to create this partnership despite our differences because you're so important. And that message, really helps a child, especially after a breakup.
It's amazing how quickly our time has almost run out,
Yes.
but there's so much information that both my co-host can offer and also Disha can offer. And I think that one more question I have, I guess, if you were going to summarize today's show, what would you say is the most important thing to make a successful co-parenting relationship?
Remembering that divorce or any breakup ends a relationship, but families endure. Just remembering that your child is part of a loving family and letting that guide your decisions.
That's really well put.
That's so great. And what I've learned is basically all parenting has a lot of similarities, a lot of them, but there's challenges in everything. And then how we deal with it, the work schedule. All these different things are put together, and add some of that adversity. It's very great to know that there's a resource like this. So you have a website that they can check out and more information.
Yes, our website is coparenting101.org. There are no spaces or anything. And there are resources there for co-parents. But we hear from people who are married who will tell us, we like to come to your site because we see that even if we broke up, life wouldn't get any easier. There's still all these challenges. So we have, married, intact, couples that come to our site and benefit. And we're on Facebook also. If you search coparenting101.org, we have a Facebook group. On Blog Talk Radio, we have a show called Co-Parenting Matters that's on hiatus because we were writing our book, and that's going to come back in the new year. Our book is called Co-Parenting 101, Helping Your Children Thrive After Divorce, and that's going to be out in May of 2013, and you can find it in bookstores, online, and it's basically a lot of what we've learned from co-parents since 2008. When I say we, my ex-husband and I run the site. We co-founded this site in 2008, and we've learned so much from other co-parents. We put it in a book and hope it can be a resource for families.
When's that available for pre-order on Amazon?
We haven't set a pre-order date, but May 1st is the launch date. So
congratulations.
Thank you.
And for more information for you, Dr. G, where can we find more info?
Anybody who wants to reach me can do so at askdrg.com. That's ASKDOCTORG.com. Thanks.
And I want to know what you guys can contact me with questions. What topics do you want to see in the next roundtable discussion? You can email me at nhaley@totaltutor.org or go to my website, totaltutor.net, to watch the TV show and also listen to my radio show every day. And for Pittsburgh, 88.3 FM, Fridays at 4:30 and Thursdays at 9 a.m., the Total Education Hour. I can't believe how quickly time runs out. But I want to definitely have you back on the show again. I'm really happy that you're my co-host, and we're going to have a great roundtable discussion next month. So take care, everyone, and we'll see you next month. Good day.
For others, it may have just been a summer job. But for me, it was training. Now I'm an Air Force pararescueman, and my job is to save lives. Make the right choices today and be ready for the challenges tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Once you figure out how to speak your kids' language, well, you don't really have to say much at all. From the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Find time to talk to your parents about getting older.
We can do it the day after I die, okay? I'm busy.
No matter who you are, it's not easy talking about aging. For help, go to voa.org/talk. A message from Volunteers of America.